Well, welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad to have Michael Saini back with us again. Welcome, Dr. Saini. This is, I think, your third time on the show. We're always very happy to have your insight.
And I'm always happy when you have me back. Nice to see you again.
Well, I have been looking forward to this because I think even on our maybe first episode a long time ago when we had you on, you were telling me about this in-depth research that you were working on about exchanges and how we do these parenting time exchanges and what a hard time that is for children. And so now the research paper has been released. I will definitely, if I'm allowed to, post that so people can see it or post a link to it. And welcome to talk about that. We're going to be talking about what a stressful time this is and how I think you did research in Canada, if I'm correct, about
Right.
how all over the place judges' orders are and how we need a little bit more work on how badly this affects children. And this is something that lawyers can learn from, judges can learn from, and parents can learn from. So give us a little introduction about this and why you started doing this research and high level what you found.
So I have to give a lot of credit to a colleague of mine, Bruce Smythe from Australia, who's been looking at changeovers for a while. He put together a group of us, including Sarah Calvert from New Zealand, and we went over and presented in Cambridge at the World Congress of Children's Rights and Family Law. And the focus that we wanted to really pay attention to is this issue of changeovers, because even though it's in most parenting plan guidelines that there should be some attention to changeovers or exchanges or transitions, it's amazing how little research has been done on the impact of these transitions for children and what are the preferred ways of doing these transitions. And so we all looked at it in a different way. Bruce and his colleagues in Australia, they did a survey of families and the various changeovers and their experiences. Sarah Calvert looked at her own clinical notes and she's been in the field for a very long time, and provided a summary, high-level summary of her reflections based on transitions within her case files. And I looked at cases in the courts. I looked at judges' summations, because you can get a lot from what judges are recommending or not in
Mhm.
terms of issues related to family law. And I've done this before in terms of shared parenting and looking at family violence. And so it made sense to look at how are judges defining changeovers, implementing any routine or any considerations around changeovers in terms of location, in terms of items that children can bring or not bring. And so then what guidance can we then take from those suggestions as ways of thinking about how to build better transition plans in our parenting plans or in our court orders or in the work that we do as coaches with parents.
So, talk to us about what your research showed that kids are experiencing during these transition. Because it seems to me that even kids who are attached to both parents, I mean, I think all kids are attached to both parents in some manner, right? You mentioned the loyalty conflict that they have, but what is the distress that these kids are experiencing?
Well, I think one is that they take on the stress of having two parents come face to face. And it's like having, relatives that don't get along. You want to try and keep them at bay. And
Mhm.
if you're trying to organize a wedding and you have that family is over there and that family is over there, and you're trying to keep them so that they're not negatively impacting each other, that's a lot of stress to take on. The logistics can be really challenging too. For example, we see that in if you have one transition or two transitions in a week, so going from one parent and then back to the other, that means if you forget something at one parent's home, you have to wait a week to get it. And so the
Mhm.
stress of what do I bring? And what will my parents say if I bring this or if I don't bring that, and so what to pack and how to prepare, and am I going to school after this, or am I going to play, or am I? So there's a lot of emotional labor that goes into the transition, both in terms of what do I expect from my parents, what do I expect from the transition itself, and then what are the implications this has after I get into the next spot. And so what we've been talking about is just the overall process of transitioning being something that you think about, before the actual transition occurs, and then you plan for transitions after, when children, make that switch into the other person's home. And so it's a whole process. It's not just that one moment where the child is crossing the parking lot, or going from one parent to the other, let's say in a police station, which is unfortunate that people still do that, or McDonald's. A lot of transitions we found happen at McDonald's because judges say it's a child-friendly place with cameras. Well, I mean, that creates a lot of conflicts.
Mhm.
But it's not just the incident, it's not just the event of the transition, but it's everything before and after that you need to be thinking about as
The
well.
preparation, right? They have to think about that. So what are some of the things that you saw that were trends? I mean, or there are a lot of I saw there was some like, maybe more than half was like school exchanges,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a go-to that people use a lot, like the theory being, let's exchange where there's a natural place where a kid's leaving or coming somewhere where the parents don't have to even be together. How does that work? Is that working well or is that causing kids stress at school?
Well, it depends how it's done. Um, I think of school as being a safe place.
Mhm.
It's a safe zone. And if you bring the conflict to the school, and now the parents are, debating who brought which books or who did not bring the books, or whatever that's happening, and they get the teachers involved, and now you've brought the conflict from the homes to the school, and now the school is no longer a safe place.
Mhm.
And so while it makes sense to not have the parents be in any sort of communication by having the exchanges done at school, where one parent drops the child off at the school and the other parent picks the child up the next day, or at the end of the day, so that the parents never are in conversation. If that conflict though is going into the school, then it's more problematic, because then you end up with children who don't want to go to school because they don't want the conflict to be brought with them. And then just how complicated it is. Like I mentioned, the situation with the Goldie equipment.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, you know, Going back and forth between parents is challenging when there's homework and there's books, and if there's no locker at the school where they can keep some of their belongings, so they have to bring it all back and forth, plus their clothes, plus any information needs to be shared between the parent. It becomes really taxing on children. And so yeah, it makes sense in principle to keep parents away from each other by using the school, but not in every situation. You have to think about, uh, you know, the logistics of it all. Does this even make sense for this specific child?
Okay, so your paper also highlights the emotional experience of what kids have, like this anticipatory crying, anxiety, resistance. Talk to us about that a little bit. What is a kid experiencing? What is that? What happens to a child over time if this isn't dealt with better?
Well, yeah, the stress of having to go, and it may not even be going to see the other parent. I think this is where a lot of parents, they like to put in their own feelings onto their children, and it's premature closure where they see that the child doesn't want to go, and see, I told you they don't want to go there. Well, no, it's because they were playing a video game, or they're watching a television show, and the show still had 5 minutes left when you said it was time to go. Or it may just be that they don't like the location, or they don't like that their parents don't get along and they have to face their parents, or it may just be too many times that they're having to go back and forth, and the child has sensitivities around moving, and so their temperament makes it so that too many transitions is challenging. So all of these can create the stress of not wanting to be part of too many exchanges. And yet, if we have too many exchanges, if children are stuck in this stressful state for too long because they're having to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is where you start seeing the impact of separation on children.